3 towns, different states, different decades, different names on the map. But investigators who worked all 3 cases, separately, years apart, each said the same thing when they finally compared notes. They said the disappearances didn't feel like accidents. They didn't feel like crimes either. They felt like something had simply decided. And when the sun came up over those towns, over the empty streets, the unlocked doors, the meals left half-eaten on kitchen tables, there was nothing left to find. No bodies, no signals, no answers. Just silence, sitting where people used to be. Welcome to the faint whisper, where the case files don't close. They just stop talking.
Authorities in 3 separate counties are struggling to explain a pattern of mass disappearances that has led investigators without...
Case 1. It started the way most of them do. A single missing person report. In the autumn of 2004, a postal worker named Gerald Ashby arrived at the town of Caldwell Hollow, a small, unincorporated community in rural Appalachian Virginia, to deliver the morning route. He had driven that road every Tuesday and Thursday for 11 years. That morning, he stopped his vehicle at the edge of town and did not move for 4 minutes. He later told investigators he couldn't explain why he stopped. He said it just felt wrong. Caldwell Hollow had approximately 212 residents at the time of the last census, mostly families, a few retirees, a small Methodist church that held services every Sunday without fail. Gerald Ashby pulled up to the first mailbox on the left, the Deering House, and noticed the front door was open. He thought nothing of it. It was a warm enough morning. But then the next door was open, and the one after that. He drove the full length of the town's main road, 4/10 of a mile, and every single door he passed was standing open. Not broken, not forced. Open, like people had simply walked out and not come back. Gerald Ashby drove to the nearest payphone 6 miles east and called the county sheriff's office. He said, and this is taken directly from the dispatch recording, "I don't think there's anyone left in there. I don't know where they went. I don't think they went anywhere good." When deputies arrived 40 minutes later, they confirmed it. 212 residents, gone. Investigators combed Caldwell Hollow for 3 days. They found warm coffee in the Deering kitchen, a television still running in the back bedroom of the Marsh family home, a child's drawing on the kitchen table, half finished, a crayon still resting on the paper like a hand had just set it down. The drawing depicted a field, and at the edge of the field, there were figures. Investigators noted the figures had no faces. There was no mass exodus recorded on any surrounding road, no vehicle convoys, no trail of belongings, no phone calls made from any resident after approximately 3:17 in the morning. Cell tower data showed all signals from within Caldwell Hollow simply stopped at 3:17 a.m. Not one after another, all of them, simultaneously. The case was formally classified as a mass disappearance of unknown origin. It remains open. No resident of Caldwell Hollow has ever been found. Not one, not ever. Gerald Ashby retired from the Postal Service the following spring. He moved 3 states away. He has given no interviews since 2007. His last recorded public statement was a single sentence given to a local paper on the 1-year anniversary of that morning. He said, "I think about the doors. I think about why they were all open. And I think, whatever came through, it didn't need to knock." Case 2. 11 years later, different state, different season. A town called Harrows Bend, Louisiana. Population, 186. Harrow's Bend sat on the edge of a distributary channel, a slow arm of water that split from the main river basin and curled around the town like a cupped hand. Locals said the water there moved differently than anywhere else, slower, quieter, like it was listening. The disappearance of Harrow's Bend was first noticed not by a postal worker, not by a deputy, but by a 14-year-old girl named Priya Lanson. Priya had been spending the week with her grandmother in a town 20 minutes north. She was supposed to return to Harrow's Bend on a Saturday morning to be with her parents. Her grandmother drove her to the edge of town and stopped at the county line bridge. She later told investigators she felt, in her words, a pressure change. She described it the way you might describe the air before a storm: dense, weighted, pointed inward. She told Priya to stay in the car. Then she walked to the center of the bridge and looked into the town. She saw the streets. She saw the buildings. She saw lights on in windows. She did not see a single person. She waited 20 minutes. She honked the car horn 3 times. Nothing moved. She drove back north with Priya and called the local emergency line. When the first responders entered Harrow's Bend, they found a town that looked like a movie set between takes. A gas station with the pump handle still extended, mid-fill, the tank of a pickup truck still open. A diner with plates of food on 6 of the 12 tables. A barber's chair still draped with a cloth. And on the floor of the barber shop, a single pair of shoes, neatly placed, toes pointed toward the door. Investigators spent weeks on Harrow's Bend. They interviewed anyone who had passed the county line in the 24 hours prior. They reviewed every camera feed within 40 miles. One traffic camera, positioned on a highway overpass 2 miles west of town, captured something that the state investigative report described as, and this is a direct quote, an anomalous light source of undetermined origin, consistent with no known natural or artificial phenomenon, observed in the direction of Harrow's Bend at approximately 4:02 a.m. The light lasted 11 seconds on the recording. Then the camera feed dropped. When it came back online, 4 minutes and 9 seconds later, the sky was dark again, and Harrow's Bend was empty. There is a detail that was never officially released. It came from an investigator who worked the case and spoke anonymously to a documentary researcher in 2019. He said that when they searched the riverbank behind the town, the slow, quiet water that curled around Harrow's Bend like a hand, they found footprints in the mud, hundreds of them, all leading toward the water, none of them leading back out. The river was searched. Divers went in at multiple points. They found nothing. The current, investigators noted, would not have been strong enough to carry anything. The water barely moved. It was just sitting there, the way it always had, listening. Priya Lanson was placed with extended family. She never returned to Harrow's Bend. She has spoken publicly about the case only once, in a handwritten letter submitted to a state review board in 2021. In it, she wrote, "My mother used to say the river watched over us. I used to think she meant it kindly. I don't think that anymore." Case 3. This is the one that keeps investigators awake. Because in Caldwell Hollow, there was no warning. In Harrow's Bend, there was no warning. But in the town of Sinclair's Point, Montana, population 241, the people knew. They called before they disappeared. Sinclair's Point, 2019. A high desert town far enough from any major highway that visitors were rare and strangers were noticed. In the 48 hours before the town went silent, the county emergency line received 31 calls from Sinclair's Point residents. 31 in a 48-hour window. For context, in the prior 6 months, That same line had received a total of 4 calls from that area. The calls were logged, time-stamped, and later reviewed in full by a federal working group. The content of the calls varied, but 3 phrases appeared across multiple recordings. The first phrase was, "Something is happening to the sky." The second was, "It's been outside for 2 nights now." The third, appearing in 11 of the 31 calls, was something investigators found deeply unsettling, not because of what it said, but because of how it was said. Calm, almost relieved. "I think it's almost time." The last call from Sinclair's Point came in at 3:51 a.m. on a Thursday. It was from a man named Douglas Farr, 63 years old, retired, had lived in Sinclair's Point for over 20 years. He did not sound afraid. He spoke clearly, slowly, and with the measured tone of someone leaving a message they had thought about for a long time. He said, "I want someone to know that we talked about it, all of us, and we agreed that fighting it wasn't the right thing. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone listening. It probably doesn't. But I want whoever finds this town to know we weren't taken. Not exactly. We just went along." The call ended. No further calls came from Sinclair's Point. When a state trooper named Dana Voss arrived at dawn, responding to the volume of overnight calls, she found the town exactly as the others had been found. Empty, intact, undisturbed. Except for one thing. On the front steps of the town's only community hall, someone had arranged stones in a circle. Large, flat stones, the kind pulled from a riverbed or a field. In the center of the circle, there was a single item, a notebook. Inside the notebook, written in at least a dozen different handwriting styles, meaning multiple people had contributed, was a list of names. All 241 residents of Sinclair's Point. Every name accounted for. At the bottom of the last page, in handwriting that did not match any of the others, was a single line that did not appear to be written by any known resident. Forensic analysis of the ink and paper confirmed it was written at the same time as the others, but the handwriting belonged to no one they could identify. That final line read, "They came willingly, as they always do." 3 towns, 3 disappearances, 3 different decades, 3 different landscapes, 3 different circumstances. And yet, the investigators who eventually sat in a room together and laid all 3 cases side by side kept returning to the same details. The time window. All 3 events concluded before dawn. The absence of distress, no signs of panic, no defensive evidence, no struggle of any kind. The threshold detail. In Caldwell Hollow, every door was open. In Harrow's Bend, footprints led toward the water, but not away. In Sinclair's Point, the residents themselves described going willingly. Whatever this was, and the official record offers no conclusion, it did not appear to chase anyone. It did not appear to force anyone. It appeared in each case to simply arrive and wait. There is one more detail. It did not make it into any official report. It came from a researcher who cross-referenced satellite imagery of all 3 locations taken in the weeks before each disappearance. In each case, Caldwell Hollow, Harrow's Bend, Sinclair's Point, the imagery showed an anomaly, a darkening at the edges of town. Not a shadow, not cloud cover, a gradual, consistent deepening of the surrounding landscape, as though something large had been sitting just outside the light for a very long time, watching, learning the shape of the place, deciding. They are still out there, those 3 towns. You can drive to them. Some are partially resettled now. Others remain as they were found, structures intact, owned by no one, visited by almost no one. The case files exist. Hundreds of pages, thousands of hours of investigative work. And at the end of all of it, every conclusion is the same. Unknown origin, unknown destination, unknown. Maybe that's the part that lingers longest. Not the emptiness of those towns, not the cold coffee on the Deering table, or the shoes on the barbershop floor, or the notebook with a handwriting that belonged to no one. But the word willingly. One of those towns, one of 241 people, chose together not to fight. And the question that no investigator has ever been able to answer is simply this. What did they see that made them decide it wasn't worth it? If you are watching this and you live near a small, isolated town, one that sits at the edge of something, water, wilderness, open sky, pay attention to your neighbors. Pay attention to what they say about the nights. Pay attention to whether they seem afraid, or whether one morning they seem to have stopped being afraid altogether. Because according to the Sinclair's Point recordings, that's the last change. The calm, right before the dawn.